Simple questions that need to be answered when it comes to DAS are who should provide the DAS? Who should pay for the DAS? Who ultimately should own the DAS? And who should manage it? The way DAS started, as we all probably know, were carrier sales teams would sell phones into customers that later realized they didn't have coverage where they needed the phones to work. DAS really was born out of a break-fix need to make sure that these customers that had phones were able to use them where they needed the phones to work most. So to that end, the carriers then had to respond, develop a plan that would support the need for their network to reach their phones in areas of their customers' facilities. Each carrier solved their own problem and only their own problem. Unfortunately, this probably still applies to a large percentage of DAS build-outs that are carrier-driven today. Some of the stakeholders when it comes to distributed antenna systems are the building owners, the carriers themselves, equipment manufacturers, and also third-party owners or tower companies. Building owners over the past few years have become far more educated about what a distributed antenna system means to them. Not only what it means to them, but how it supports their population, what they can potentially put on that DAS, and also the fact that they can go ahead and initiate a DAS that is best suited to support them without permission or without waiting for the carriers. These changes have driven DAS from a single carrier break-fix solution to a platform that enables sharing of infrastructure across all carriers, all applications, and all devices. Building owners want a multi-carrier DAS. Typical large venues are looking to accommodate large data-driven applications. Again, as we just heard a few minutes ago, there's more and more being put onto these devices every single day. In fact, I read one time that devices, or I should say users, identify their phone not by the network or the network carrier, but rather by the device itself. I have a BlackBerry, I have an iPhone, I have an Android. So the need to be ubiquitous across all carriers is very important. The need to have coverage to support any and all of those applications, independent of who the carrier is what faces large venues on a daily basis. Additionally, more and more public safety is starting to creep up into conversations when it comes to in-building infrastructure. Operational simplicity. Once this DAS is installed, it needs to be invisible. It needs to work, the coverage needs to be there, but at the end of the day, the building owner doesn't want to be bothered with any of the back-end support or upkeep of the DAS. 70% of DASs installed are still carrier-directed. Going back to what I said earlier, a break-fix model or potentially a new customer or some type of offload of the macro network are directed by the carriers. They're done by the integrators for the carriers and probably fall into that single carrier category. 30%, the remaining 30% are driven by the enterprise. Stakeholder number one, the building owner, the large venue, et cetera. Some of the integrators are starting to move into public safety, realizing that there's a need for public safety two-way radio. Some integrators have embraced the fact that they need to start including this as part of their proposals. There's a huge demand for real RF engineers in the industry. The number of designs, the number of in-building solutions being installed has put a real strain on the number of people who can professionally design these solutions. There has been a standardization on IB-Wave. And last, there's a push towards managed services. So being part of this DAS beyond the deployment, being part of this DAS for as long as it's operationally functional. What is the shared DAS program? A shared DAS program consists of the three main parties we just discussed: the building owner, the carrier, and the integrator. The building owner should always own the infrastructure. They need to call the shots for what's in the best interest of their customer, which is either the people who are leasing space or their internal clients. The carriers are often asked to pay to build out these infrastructures. And lastly, an integrator needs to design, deploy, and manage that solution on an ongoing basis. DAS management is the key element of any successful shared DAS program.